Welcome to Reiter and Sons, a show with two talkative brothers who decided to organize their ramblings into digestible, shareable content. To our new and longtime listeners alike, the title is reminiscent of our late father's dream of one day having an office building with these words stamped on it. He wanted many things, but two things really stood out. First, he wanted to be remembered. He was very much afraid of being forgotten. Ironically, and we can say this with 100% certainty, there's not a single person on earth who ever interacted with him for any extended period of time who can possibly forget him. For many reasons, some good and some not so good, he was a force to be reckoned with.
In his mind, Reiter and Sons would immortalize both himself and his legacy, which leads us to the second thing he wanted, and the topic of this episode, to pass his knowledge and experience on to his children.
We promised not to make every episode about our father, but given the outsized influence he had in our respective lives, we felt that this was the right topic at the right time. He would have actually turned 76 this month.
After countless random text messages to each other saying we should do a podcast, here we are. Today we'll talk a little bit about the conflict between wanting to pass on your knowledge and experience to your children and the opposing force of them growing up and learning from their own mistakes. Is there a balance? Will fathers ever be able to avoid the pitfalls of giving unsolicited advice? In the end, does it matter?
Joseph, I recently posted a LinkedIn piece about Dad, his influence on me, and how I was thinking about him more these days. The details aren't important. What is important is you wrote an incredibly insightful comment on the post, and I want you to read it out loud. It's one of the most insightful things I've ever heard you say, and I felt that it deserved a deeper discussion. Why don't you read the comment for our audience?
Sure, here goes. So I said, it's hard to reconcile a strong parental desire to teach your children everything you've learned so their lives are easier than your own when the forces of becoming an adult push them down their own path. Looking back, I know it was love, missed connections, and frustration at there never being enough time to pass along everything before our kids have strong ideas of their own. At the end of the day, the time we had together with Dad is what matters, and we carry what we learned from him every day. I know he loved us more than anything.
I want to add one more element to this for the benefit of our listeners. Dad was in poor health for much of his last 20 years. In fact, much poorer health than he and Mom led us to believe. So in addition to the diametrically opposed forces, he also sensed his own mortality in a way that I'm sure was overbearing. Not only did he badly want to pass on his experience to us, but he also realized that he had less and less time to do it. That's existential pressure. We know Dad had a lot of anxiety, and this must have been really difficult for him. Obviously, we were grown-ass men by the time the pressure was at its highest, but I'm sure when he wasn't giving unsolicited advice, he was biting his tongue not to. What's your take?
I mean, I'm getting perspective now as a parent, and I have a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, and almost a 9-year-old son, actually, 3 sons. And it's like overnight, my 13-year-old, is kind of going from wanting to hear what I tell him and, Dad, what would you do? And all this kind of stuff to not really being interested in talking about it. It's like this instinct to just go off on your own. I'm not sure, obviously how it is with girls, if it's the same. I know it's a pretty strong instinct with boys to do your own thing and to figure it out yourself and do it your way. What do you think?
It's funny that you say that because it pretty much lines up with my worldview, having 2 boys of my own, as you know. Although, and I've talked to your better half about this, but she just wouldn't budge. I asked her if she was going to let me have the youngest and the oldest in the clan, and she said yes. So I guess you're stuck with 3, that means. But in any case, I say it like this. With boys, it's, first, your life happens like this. First, you're the funniest guy in the world. Like, there's no one funnier than Dad. Then you're the coolest guy in the world because, the kid just wants to be just like Dad, right? And then suddenly you're the dumbest guy in the world. And this all happens, within, like you said, I'd say, let's call it 12 to 15 year period. I'm sure it varies for people. Although I do think that last sort of cliff, it's not really a cliff. It kind of, it starts with disinterest and then ends up being like, okay, I can't stand you because you're just the lamest thing in the world. So I've obviously lived kind of both of those, and I'm living a second one now, and I'm in the coolest guy in the world phase, which is cool, but I know it's going to end. What I can say is that, that with my oldest, who I'm super proud of, he went through that phase, and then he's no longer in that phase. So now we have a great relationship, and you know, the one thing that I think Dad would have really benefited from is a little bit of patience and, let's say, forgiveness. Instead of like, just looking at things in such a static way, right? So because people change quite a bit over time, especially effectively children that become men. um, and for me personally, like I never was able to kind of get to the point with Dad where I am with Ethan, with my oldest. And I think the difference is that I made a very concerted effort to bite my tongue quite a bit. I probably could have done it more, but at the end of the day, I mean, you don't want to completely compromise your values and identity when you hear stuff that's some of the stuff you hear out of a teenager's mouth. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you have to understand, like, you just put yourself, like, we were like that when we were
Yep.
that age, right? And of course, I made the mistake of telling Ethan that once, and that made things even worse. So it was like you have to even bite your tongue when you like try to. Effectively, there's just no wisdom whatsoever that can come out of your mouth at a certain stage. However, they're still listening, right? And so it's really about kind of measuring, what you say, being super patient and listening and biting your tongue and knowing that, hey, this is a phase like anything else. They're going to find themselves. They're not going to be just like you. They're not even going to have the same worldview as you. And that's the other thing that I think in Dad's case was, there was a worldview issue with Dad, right? His was very singular and very rigid, and anything that slightly deviated from it was basically he considered to be insanity, right? So it was very difficult to reconcile that, and so I think that's kind of my take on the whole thing with Dad.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'd add on to what you said is it's not just that they're listening to you, they're absorbing an example. I think, the way that they can dysregulate sometimes when they got like strong emotions and hormones going, and it's really hard sometimes to keep it together when your kid does something so incredibly outrageous. But you have to remember you are kind of a regulator for them. You're something that at least can show the example, like, hey, grown-ups can lose their shit too. But, this is how we go back to it. And it's really interesting too, because Lori and I, Lori is my wife, we lose our shit in different ways and for different reasons. And when we do, it's kind of funny because one of us usually remains rational when the other one isn't. And so we'll kind of play devil's advocate with each other and just like, hey, let's not rush to judgment. Maybe this isn't what you looks like it is. Let's see what happens. And then when I'm losing my shit, of course, that's not possible for me. I can't see that far. But, I think it's important to just keep that in mind when my kids are doing stuff that drive me nuts. This is a note to myself. When my kids are driving me nuts, it's not just about how I feel, but it's what I'm doing and the example they're taking from it. Like, hey, when grown-ups are stressed out and they don't know what to do, they also can't be mature. We got to show them that they're mature as well, and how to do it and how to get yourself out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, the other thing, we forget that they're kids, right? So, and this is the part that Dad, I don't think he ever forgot that we were kids when we were kids, but again, for him, everything was like the continuum was very static, right? I mean, basically to the day he died, I'm sure, and I hate to say it that way, but let's say not the day he died, but the last, few interactions I had with him, he probably still thought that I would like never catch him in terms of like global wisdom or whatever, as far as like what he felt he had. And it's funny because from a life experience perspective, and again, he lived, I mean, he when he was 26 years older than me, so he obviously lived a quarter century more than me, just full stop. No, there's no questioning the life experience difference. But as far as like significant events, I mean, I was married twice as many times as Dad, which is funny because he actually tried to give me advice on how to handle like a divorce, and I'm like, Dad, like, trust me, like, I appreciate it, but this is not something that you have experience with, I do, right? And this was like well after, it happened.
Okay.
But things like that, to where he never ever at least projected that he was that we grew up. I mean, I feel like he knew that intellectually. He talked about it that way, but at the same time, it was always like he was always going to be like much more grown up than we were. And what I try to do, especially with my older son, is because he's obviously a grown up. He's 23, but at the same time, and he'll be the first. Him at 23 versus him at 17 is he'll be the first one to tell you now that he's got a long ways to go before he's kind of absorbed, the life experience that he wants. And at 17, of course, what he was projecting was like, I know everything and nothing that you say makes any sense. And it's not the kind of relationship we have. So what we're really doing now is we're just kind of comparing experience. And the thing with Dad, his, part of like not wanting to, and really about the comment that you made on the post is he felt that his value to the world was advice, was like unsolicited, and it was unsolicited advice. And what I've come to kind of appreciate, over the years, even in a professional sense, but also, now with a grown up son that I can have adult conversations with, is that, being a mentor is way more important than being a coach or an advisor. And the way I describe being a mentor is, you give your opinion when you're either asked about it, or there's an obvious moment when your opinion might actually, provide a perspective. It's not about saying you should do this. It's more about saying, here's what I think, here's what happened to me, here, have you thought about it this way, blah, blah, blah. And it's such a completely different posture than, what Dad had, right? So, and it just makes for such a much, at least so far, a much more functional relationship, with my son, right? And it's what I plan to do with my very different, younger son. But we'll see how it pans out. And I know I still have some years ahead that are going to be very difficult with him. And it's going to suck because he's like, I'm like his idol now, right? So, and I know that's going to completely go down the drain, like probably in 6-7 years, So, but again, everything passes, and I guess what I wish for Dad is that he had at least the way he projected it to us, that he had like evolved his view of us to be different than him always being kind of like the wise old man that was supposed to advise us, right? So again, I don't think this is what he was thinking all the time, but I feel like that was a tendency that he had, right?
Yeah. And I would say, just kind of to bookend this, I think one thing interesting that I've heard lately, and I'm trying to remind myself to do, is when your kids start venting, and spouse and anyone else starts venting at you, try to ask a clarifying question. Do you want me to just listen, or do you want me to help? And leave it there. And I feel like it takes away, because I don't know if you've ever heard the men are from Mars, women are from Venus thing.
Yes.
So there is definitely that I'm going to fix it. And it's totally in my mentality to go there. And it's like, sometimes I just need to listen and be there for the person and not try to fix their problems or, point out what they could have done better. So I think, definitely something I want to apply.
If you, just a total aside, but if you've never seen the video about the girl with the nail in her head, and talking about headaches and all this, and the guy saying, just take the nail, and she's like, no, it's not about the nail. And that's a microcosm for what you're talking about. But I like your approach of asking, because sometimes, especially when people, aren't, and I think this would work very well with doesn't have to be like a spousal thing, right? Because it could be with your kids. They could just be telling you something that they just want to tell you versus asking for help. And sometimes people don't know how to ask for help, or they don't feel comfortable to ask for help about something, or maybe it starts out telling you something and then turns out being, an ask for help. So I feel like, like having the presence of mind to actually like determine that before you jump in and try to solve it versus just keeping your mouth shut is good. But I feel like you do have to ask, because at least for me, like I don't know the difference sometimes. When I hear a problem, I want to fix it, right? I mean, obviously, especially if the solution seems pretty straightforward, like, and it could be that the other person just doesn't see it. But you're right. That's not the purpose of conversation in a lot of cases.
Definitely, man. Speaking of questions, do you think we should go on to the interrogation session?
I think so.
All right.
So we've come to the segment of the show where we ask each other questions. Neither of us knows exactly what the other one is going to ask. We reminded each other will be public, so we're not going for all-out shock value. But if we do it right, at least one of us will be surprised about something during this segment. We do reserve the right to plead the fifth, in which case the interrogator will need to pick a different question. So you better come prepared with some backups, or this could be a very short segment. So, yeah. Joseph, let me start. So I guess my question, I'll give you a really easy one to start.
Okay.
And we're going to do 2 questions each, and maybe more if time permits. But let's start with 2 questions. So my first question is, what's like your earliest sort of concrete memory with Dad?
I would say probably, I was thinking about that the other day because I wondered if you were going to ask about that. I would probably say something around a car. I remember, I think it was like a Ford something that he loved and then loved to hate afterwards. That we got it. And I remember that. I mean, there's lots of other little bits and pieces, but like a Mercury. Lots of memories other than that, but just like as far as like a real concrete event that I could point to and say, okay, I remember that thing happening specifically, and Dad was so proud and so excited by it. So I remember that.
All right. And I just realized we did this segment in reverse. I was supposed to let you talk and ask the first question, but in case it's not clear to the audience, I like to talk a lot, so I just went ahead. But let me just add one quick thing to what you said, not about the actual memory itself, but I find that there's a lot of blur for me. And not just like, obviously like, I remember some things like when I was 3 and they're blurry, but then I remember some things when I was like 10 and they're still blurry. So I don't know if that means that I'm old or if it means that it's how I coped with, kind of growing up or what, but it's really, I don't really have any like super crystal clear memories, with that I can just go back to and describe, in great detail. They're all there. It's just, I guess I've just absorbed them into long-term memory at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I guess I remember also, and I don't know how old it was, but I remember the smell of him soldering something.
Yeah.
And seeing him do that. Like, it's probably just like more notable things that you remember more. If it were Mom that we're asking about, I'd probably go with walking to school with her. And that was actually, I think, to pick you up. So it was before even I went to school. But with Dad, I think those were kind of like some of my earliest memories, just remembering that sort of thing. All right. So just so you know, we're not trying to shock each other, but we also didn't rehearse how we were going to do this. So there we go. So I think, all right. So I'm going to throw one at you now. What is the most important thing you learned from Dad?
Wow. Yeah, I would just sum it up as loyalty. I don't know how else to put it. Like I would, just how he was to our family, and to Mom, but to us. And again, people have different love languages, right? Dad's was a very much a tough love language, but it was clear that he cared about us more than anything else. And, I mean, they were married 52 years, Yeah. That's a long time. Especially if you knew Dad, that's a long time. Anyway, I'm sure Mom will watch this, but in any case, I think that's fairly accurate. But also for me, work ethic. I don't. I guess people would consider me a workaholic. My wife certainly would, but it's not really about that. It's just more about commitment than anything else. It's when you commit to something, like and by the way, and I'll be the first to admit there are things that I did that I didn't fully commit to, and I ended up, not seeing them through. But when I commit to something, I'm all in, right? And that's something that was Dad in a nutshell, right? So that's probably the thing that I learned the most from him, and it was 100% by example, right? I mean, I can't remember a single thing that he said that I could repeat, academically that says, "Oh, here's how you should be about this." It was all just watching what he did and how he sacrificed and everything. So, yeah. And then, sorry, let me just add one more thing. So, and it's not even like, his influence was so significant that it extended to like he and Mom would not even go out, right? And this is a bit extreme, but I can count maybe 2 or 3 times in our entire lives where he and Mom went out, like, to without us, right? And that was, and maybe it was more than that, but as far as I can remember, right, when we were kids, when we actually needed, babysitting or whatever.
Yeah, like after you left, when
Sure.
it was just the 3 of us, they did go on a couple of short trips.
Okay.
But I was like, I think
You were
one
like
one time
16.
I was 15, but I could basically ride my bike to like a store if I needed something because
Sure.
it was fairly close. And then I
Sure.
think the next time I was 16, so I could drive and do whatever, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So anyway, I think, but I think that to me it also demonstrated commitment, right? Like family and home was more important to Dad than anything else, right? And
Right.
and and again, the way he expressed it sometimes was not ideal, but it was never in question, right? Like where his intention was never in question. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right, question 2 for you. This one, I don't know. I was trying to think of something kind of whimsical, so here goes. Um, what was Dad's reaction when you started like when you got into theater, right? When you decided to like study theater and, well, musical theater, or sorry, technical theater, but also just like theater and everything, because Dad had some very let's say rigid sort of traditional views on things, and I'm just curious like what his reaction was. I've never really been privy to that conversation.
Um, Honestly, I don't know that I could pinpoint a specific reaction. And I honestly don't remember, because for me that was more like I just started going to more after school things. He was I'm trying to remember how he even felt about it. I think he was proud of me for finding something that I loved. I think he was pretty skeptical about me getting a job doing that,
Sure. And
which I
that he
totally
clearly he
understand.
was right about that part. So, and thankfully you didn't actually pursue that path. So,
Well, I ended up, I would say, having anxiety about, getting a job when it was really getting like close, right? Like I was finishing up school and it's like, this is real now. And this isn't like, but yeah, I don't know if a specific thing, like I don't remember him ever being like super against it or anything like that. I don't think I ever got into an argument about it with him. He obviously, when I was going to, I auditioned for FSU because there was like a program that I was getting into. You could just go, but it was like a program and a scholarship and everything. And he took me. So,
wow.
or no, he took me later, to look for housing and stuff. But he was really, I don't remember him not being supportive, to be honest with you. Um,
That's good.
I don't know.
That's good. No, and by the way, I didn't expect any different. I just honestly didn't
Yeah,
know what that conversation was like, because, I mean, and you had the benefit of being the second child. I did all the shocking for you. So like, I
that's for
told
sure.
him, I told him one time that I wanted to be a philosopher, and he laughed at me. Like his response was to laugh at me. Like seriously. And this was, I was like 17. This is like when people like think they want to be philosophers, right? So it's not like that out of the ordinary. But he laughed at me like I was just like it was a joke, and I was like, no, I'm serious, and he just kept laughing. So, um, so anyway, yeah, so that's my question. I'm glad it sounds like he was more supportive even than I would have expected. So I appreciate that. Appreciate
Yeah,
you
like I
clarifying that.
said, I don't remember anything super specific, but that does bring me to my last question for you. So your son has expressed a desire to become a philosopher.
Oh, you
I'm just messing with you.
all
Um,
right? Like no.
I just wanted to see what your reaction was. Um, so,
My reaction is I'm not retiring because he's not
oh
going to be
boy,
able to help me. So yeah, go ahead.
ain't that the truth? So I guess I'm going to throw you a curveball because the other one was a little bit more, or not a curveball, one right down the plate. So, what is your happiest memory of dad? Like the thing that made you happy remembering dad?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, but obviously time, kind of changed uh, my kind of feeling about it. So it has to be like my and it's gonna sound weird because it's actually really sad when you look at it on balance. But it was like I'm gonna try not to choke up when I say this because every time I talk about this I choke up. But he like so they were going under a big trip, right? This was right before he had his heart attack,
Right.
and they were supposed to come for dinner. We were on good terms. I mean, well, let's put it this way: we were on the best terms we were going to be on. We were like our relationship was very at that stage, and this was what 3 years ago, 4 years ago, three and a half, 3 years ago, a little bit over
Yeah.
three. Our relationship was no. He died in September of 22, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, 3.5 years ago, let's say. So, it was our relationship was good, but it was more or less superficial. For like 25 years, I didn't really talk to dad about anything super important because there, I just learned that it wasn't going to go the way that I wanted it to. I shouldn't say there was no point, but it wasn't going to go the way that I wanted to, which was really me just wanting to talk to him about stuff versus it turning into a defensive kind of situation.
Right.
And I just didn't, I kind of lost a desire to, I think in my early 20s, I really needed that, and it wasn't there for me, and it had a kind of a pretty profound impact. But obviously in my late 40s, it was already like water under the bridge. So our relationship was really, it was reasonably good, but it was also a little bit distant. But still, so I knew they were preparing and they were doing all this stuff. It was a huge, kind of thing they were going to do. And we invited them to dinner, the day before, because, I mean, first of all, they were gonna have everything packed. So,
Right.
and second, we wanted to see them. We wanted him to come to our home and spend time with, our family and all that stuff, and with their grandson and etc. And they canceled. Um, and and this kind of goes back to them kind of downplaying, how serious his condition was. He was just feeling very very bad, right, physically, and I was so pissed off. Like I remember he basically texted me and said, "Can you come help me? I need to give you no," because they were gonna come by the next day and drop off a bunch of stuff that they wanted me to
Okay.
have that they didn't want to take with them or whatever, something like that. And my immediate response to them was no. Like I was so mad, right? And again, not having the benefit of understanding just how bad his had I known this, I would have like basically not
Yeah.
left his side. And and then something in my mind or somewhere said no, you should go. And I mean that's like to put it in perspective, for our viewers, the millions of viewers that we have, um, um, billions. I don't know what it is at this point, but something like that. But it's like they were what like half an hour away at night in like Atlanta traffic. It would have been like 45 minutes. It was a total pain in the ass. Um, And I knew it was going to be like him just, telling me about all this stuff he wanted me to have, and like explaining to me like how the toaster oven works and all this stuff, which was just, dad,
It's
right?
valuable info.
Yeah. And it's like the last thing I wanted to do, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I had just driven back from, maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like I had just gone somewhere. I come back from a business trip or something like that day or something. And like the last thing I wanted to do, and I remember because I think Gretchen, my wife, texted me like when I was on my way home saying, yeah, they canceled or something. Cause she like mom talked to her, something like that. It's not important. But so, again, something inside me said, no, you have to go. And I went. And I mean, yeah, dad was in like terrible shape, right? But he was insisting that everything was good and that, they were looking forward to their trip and they had, and then of course he did spend 20 minutes telling me about all this stuff and whatever. And then but that to get to your question, right? Like my happiest moment, like, we just had like this huge hug, right? And we hadn't in a really long time. And I don't know if it was, because somehow I knew that this was the last time or not, because I don't remember thinking that, but it sure felt like it, right? Like after in hindsight. And it actually was. It was the last time I spent time with dad when he was conscious. The next time I saw him, he was, yeah. So, and yeah, the only thing that I think about when I think about that moment, besides how nice it was, is just that I wish it had been longer. So that's the answer.
Okay. On that note,
F you, by the way, because I'm about to ugly cry here. But yeah, like you
I
said,
did
when you
ask you for a happy memory.
I'm
not sure if you understood the assignment here.
No, I didn't understand it. But I'm just so happy that I overrode my sort of indignant just I've had enough kind of thing in my head, that because I mean, as you recall, right, they would cancel all the time. Whether it was more or less, you could go visit them almost within sort of certain constraints, but they would cancel pretty frequently. And again, what they just weren't telling us how bad things were, right? And
Yep.
we could kind of see it, but at the same time, they were driving places, they were they were doing stuff, so it was like okay, they're okay to drive on some road trip, but they're not okay to come for dinner, right? That's kind of what we saw from the outside. And had we actually known like, hey, this is what it is, right? And I mean, it would have been different. I think it would have been different in a way they didn't want it to be, because they didn't want us to kind of live their misery, right? So, and that's kind of their demeanor. But at the same time, there would have been a whole lot less sort of bitterness about canceling events and just not feeling well and all those different things. So anyway, yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that I'll take away from Dad, and I kind of understand now, at least where his mindset could have been. He told us a lot. I mean, the last time I spoke to him, like really spoke to him, was the night before they were going to travel. He called. I missed the call. He left me a voicemail. Thank goodness I missed the voicemail, or I missed the first call, because I have a voicemail from him. But I did answer and talk to him, and he's like, I don't know. He definitely knew he was dying, but it's like one of those things, like some of it's like a little dramatic, and you don't know if you're just your dad's trying to tell you, woe is me. But I feel like he did know.
Which, by the way, he did quite a bit throughout his life, so this is not unprecedented. Yeah. And that's
right.
Let's be honest. Yeah.
I mean, at the same time too, like he got diagnosed with emphysema, and I don't know. You're not supposed to make it very long, and he made it like 17 years, 20 years.
Right.
with that diagnosis, which is incredibly beating the odds. You know, I feel like he knew, and you know, he just wanted to talk to me before he left. And I'm happy he called. All right, so on that super bummer, we probably need to put an exclamation mark on this before we need to take a break for being verklempt and whatnot.
Yeah, so thanks so much for spending your valuable time listening to two brothers yap about stuff on Reiter and Sons. We'll see you next time.
Keep talking to your own loved ones and friends and colleagues. Personal relationships matter more than ever. And finally, we love you, Dad. Thank you
Dad.
so much for doing this, Leo, and hopefully we'll do it again.
Yeah, take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Let's clap on 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that did not work. We'll try that again. Clap on 3. 1, 2, 3. All right.
One more time. Yeah, because clap on 3. Sorry.
1, 2,
2, 3. You're just way too slow.